There are moments that split a life into two chapters. One before the truth and one after it. Soft sigh. Lisa never imagined that the happiest news she would ever carry would also become the reason someone she loved disappeared. At 26, she often looked back at the dreams she had as a little girl. Nothing extravagant, just a peaceful home, a faithful husband, and children whose laughter would fill quiet evenings. When she met Mark a few years earlier, those dreams suddenly felt close enough to touch. He was charming, attentive, and always seemed to know exactly how to make her laugh after a long day. Coffee dates turned into late-night conversations, flowers arrived without special occasions, and before long they were building plans for a future that felt unshakable. Then one ordinary morning changed everything. After days of feeling unusually sick, Lisa stared at a pregnancy test with trembling hands. Two unmistakable lines stared back at her. Fear mixed with excitement as she hurried to tell the man she believed would celebrate beside her. Instead, silence filled the room. Mark barely looked at her. His face lost every trace of warmth as he whispered that he wasn't ready to become a father. He asked for time, but deep inside, Lisa sensed something far more frightening than hesitation. As she walked home that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that the family she had dreamed about was already slipping away, and she had no idea how much worse tomorrow would become. Long pause. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't arrive with a loud argument. Sometimes it comes through unanswered messages, an empty doorway, and a silence that grows heavier every single day. At first, Lisa tried to believe Mark simply needed time. She called him. No answer. She sent kind messages, hoping he would remember the promises he once whispered so easily. Days turned into weeks, and every attempt was met with distance. Finally, she gathered the courage to visit his apartment. She stood outside, her hands resting gently on her growing belly, and knocked several times. She knew he was inside. She could hear movement, but the door never opened. Later that evening, one final message appeared on her phone. "I can't do this. I'm sorry." Nothing else followed. Holding back tears, Lisa returned to her parents' home, feeling as though her future had collapsed overnight. Her mother cried beside her, while her father quietly placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and promised they would never let her face this alone. Their support became the small light she desperately needed. As the months passed, doctor visits replaced date nights. Every heartbeat she heard during her appointments reminded her that someone innocent depended entirely on her strength. She continued working long shifts despite the exhaustion, carefully saving every dollar for tiny clothes, diapers, and a crib she assembled with her father's help. Then, one stormy night, the contractions began. Fear rushed through her as her mother drove her to the hospital. Hours of pain seemed endless until a tiny cry filled the room. Voice trembling. In that instant, every tear, every lonely night, and every broken promise faded into the background. The nurse gently placed a beautiful baby girl into Lisa's arms. As she whispered, "Hello, Emma. I'm your mom." She made a promise no one else could hear, a promise that this little girl would never question whether she was loved. But outside the hospital walls, the hardest chapter of Lisa's life was only beginning. Deep breath. Bringing Emma home should have felt like the beginning of a fairy tale. Instead, it became the start of a life filled with endless responsibility. The nights blurred together as Lisa rocked her crying baby, warmed bottles, changed diapers, and whispered gentle lullabies while fighting to keep her own eyes open. There were evenings when she quietly cried beside Emma's crib, not because she regretted becoming a mother, but because she wondered how one person could carry so much alone. Months passed, and Emma slowly began smiling at the world. Those tiny smiles became the fuel that kept Lisa moving. She returned to the grocery store as soon as she could, standing for hours behind the register while her aching feet begged for rest. Every paycheck disappeared almost immediately into diapers, baby food, medicine, and rent. She wore old clothes without complaint because every extra dollar belonged to Emma's future. Occasionally, Lisa saw Mark around town. Once, he walked right past the stroller carrying his own daughter. Their eyes met for only a second before he looked away and disappeared into the crowd as though they were strangers. Long pause. Lisa wanted answers, but she refused to chase someone who had already made his choice. Her parents remained her greatest blessing. Her mother watched Emma while Lisa worked, and her father could always make the little girl burst into laughter. Their home was far from perfect, but it overflowed with something money could never buy: love that never walked away. One evening, after another exhausting shift, Lisa sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea that had already gone cold. Looking toward Emma sleeping peacefully nearby, she whispered, "We're going to be okay." She believed those words, until an unexpected problem threatened the only job keeping their little family afloat. Soft sigh. Just when Lisa felt she had found a rhythm, life reminded her that being a single mother meant there was no room to fall apart. Emma was only a few months older when she caught a high fever. Through the night, Lisa barely left her side, placing cool cloths on her forehead and softly singing until her own voice became hoarse. Every tiny whimper tightened the fear in her heart. By morning, her mother rushed them to the clinic, where the doctor assured them it was only a virus. As Emma slowly recovered, Lisa realized something powerful. Every frightening moment made her love her daughter even more fiercely. But another challenge was already waiting. Missing work to care for Emma angered her manager. He warned that another absence could cost her the job she depended on. Long pause. Lisa smiled politely, but inside, she was terrified. Losing that paycheck meant losing the security she had fought so hard to build. Still, Emma continued growing into a bright, determined little girl. She took her first wobbly steps with fearless laughter, clapping proudly every time she stood back up after falling. Watching her daughter refuse to give up reminded Lisa to do the same. Soon afterward, an unexpected letter arrived. It offered Lisa and Emma a small apartment of their own. It wasn't fancy, a single bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and plain white walls. But when they carried their last box inside, it felt like a palace. Sitting on the floor together, sharing toast for dinner while Emma giggled over a dropped spoon, Lisa whispered, "This is our home." For the first time in years, peace began replacing fear. But loneliness has a quiet way of returning, and before long, one innocent question from Emma would reopen a wound Lisa thought had finally healed. Deep breath. Time has a quiet way of healing wounds, but it also brings questions that no parent is ever fully prepared to answer. Emma was 4 years old when she came home from school one evening, climbed onto the couch beside Lisa, and asked softly, "Mom, do I have a dad?" The room suddenly felt silent. Lisa's heart ached, but she refused to let bitterness shape her daughter's future. She gently took Emma's little hand and smiled. "Yes," she said, "you do. But he made a choice not to be part of our lives." Emma thought for a moment before wrapping her tiny arms around her mother. "That's okay," she whispered. "I have you." Voice trembling, Lisa held her close, fighting back tears. In that simple hug, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every lonely holiday suddenly felt worthwhile. The years continued to pass. Emma started school, made wonderful friends, and filled their little apartment with laughter and endless questions. Her teachers often praised her kindness and confidence, reminding Lisa that love had accomplished what fear never could. Money was still tight, and long workdays never disappeared, but happiness no longer depended on having everything. It came from bedtime stories, homemade dinners, warm hugs, and hearing Emma call, "Good morning, Mom," with the brightest smile. One sunny afternoon, they visited the same park where Lisa had once watched Mark walk away without a word. This time, she didn't search the crowd. She simply watched Emma run freely across the grass, laughing without a care in the world. A stranger sitting nearby smiled and said, "She looks like a very happy little girl." Lisa looked at her daughter, then quietly smiled back. "She is," she answered. "And that's the greatest success of my life." As Emma turned and ran back into her mother's waiting arms, Lisa realized something she wished every broken heart could understand. The people who leave your life do not decide your future. The love you choose to give does. Soft sigh. And in the end, the little family everyone thought was incomplete had become whole, in the only way that truly mattered.